This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
I'm sure it's been this way in years past too, but my goodness, was the first day of NFL free agency a mess. There was so much stuff going on. It feels like every key free agent has already been signed, and there's a lot to react to and a lot of betting implications of what we saw happen during the day yesterday. That's what we're going to do for today, is go through the signings, the key signings, talking about Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, what it means for both the Falcons and the Vikings, talking about the Eagles' big moves, interesting moves elsewhere across the NFL, and try to identify what it means from a betting perspective based on the current available markets of FanDuel Sportsbook. And I'll talk about some win totals via my model. I have got that model already. No win totals up yet at FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll go through some key numbers for the primary players from yesterday. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, here to recap day one of the legal tampering period in the NFL and outline what it means from a betting perspective for this 2024 NFL season. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. We're here Monday through Friday, breaking down all key betting markets that you could want to find. We had Dr. Ed Feng on the show yesterday talking about his favorite men's college basketball conference tournament markets, breaking down the key tournaments and where Ed sees value over at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can find that by going to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find that show, as always, on the FanDuel YouTube page and over on FanDuel TV Plus. FanDuel is putting the ball in your court the rest of the NBA season, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Bet on the NBA with a wide range of bet types, including quick bets, live same-game parlays, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and Vermont, and North Carolina. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana, visit MD Gambling Health Oregon, Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's kick things off here by talking about the big news from day one of free agency, which of course was Kirk Cousins deciding to sign in principle with the Atlanta Falcons. Right now, the Falcons are a very interesting team because it's obviously a big upgrade going from Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke to Kirk Cousins. And the reason that I think this is a big upgrade is because it's not just Kirk, but also like there were a lot of dumb mistakes that the Falcons made. And I think that kind of masked some good infrastructure around their quarterback. And that's not a huge surprise. If you watch them, you kind of understand what that's all about. Cousins has been a solid but unspectacular quarterback in good conditions, and he gets good conditions here, playing in a dome, playing with some good offensive skill players. So it's a good situation for the Falcons, but it's a bit flawed beyond the quarterback, and I think that maybe that's being a bit overlooked by the market right now. The defense of the Falcons is fine. They're really good against the run. They're okay against the pass. Definitely not great there. And especially once you dig into some more of the granular stuff, they look a bit shakier against the pass and what the overall numbers may have looked like last year. Basically on early downs, they were pretty inefficient against the pass. They're better on late downs, but early down stuff does tend to be a bit stickier. So I have more concerns about their pass defense than others may. And like, their skill guys are good, but like beyond Drake London, you got Kyle Pitts who dealt with a lot of injuries and inconsistency, and then a lot of question marks beyond that outside of Bijan Robinson. So the skill guys are good. I don't think they're great. I think they're a step below what he had with Justin Jefferson, half a year Jordan Addison as well, TJ Hawkinson when he was there. So I think it actually is a downgrade from an environment perspective for Cousins as well. So when I put together the defense with some question marks along with Cousins and some decent skill guys, I settle in at 9.4 wins on this Falcons team. And that's a pretty good mark, especially in a division that doesn't have a ton of great teams. But it's also below market because if you look at FanDuel Sportsbook, they have team specials up for various teams, and they have the Falcons at minus 165 to win 10 plus games. And as mentioned, my win total has them at 9.4 right now. They're minus 110 to win the NFC South. I can't get there. I think that the market is a bit too high on the Falcons. They've got a great schedule that does help things for sure, but so does the rest of the division. So if we're talking about gaining ground in the division, it's not going to move the needle as much as you might think. I still think the Saints are kind of lively in this discussion at plus 340. The Buccaneers brought back Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. So honestly, I think it comes down to this. I was lower on the market or than the market on the Falcons entering last year. I am lower on their infrastructure around the quarterback entering this year as well. So I think that I'm giving the same bump to the Falcons as the market and adding Kirk Cousins. But the problem is the baseline was lower, so that gap isn't going to get bridged. I'm not going to go after the Falcons to win the NFC South, even with Cousins being in place now. I think minus 110 is too rich. Minus 165 or 10 plus wins is too much for me. It's a gettable division, but minus 110 is a bridge too far for me. So even with Kirk Cousins in town, I don't see myself buying into the Falcons in the futures market for this year, just because I think the Saints are okay. Okay. They're not great. They're okay. I think the Bucs are okay. I could see myself buying into the Saints later on, but the Falcons, to me, market's a bit too high in them, so I'll pass, despite the fact they did get a big upgrade in adding Kirk Cousins to this roster. Let's talk about some other moves that occurred across yesterday. Obviously, the big one is the Vikings losing Kirk Cousins as he goes to Atlanta. Let's talk about their situation. So the Vikings are a very interesting team. And obviously losing Cousins does hurt them quite a bit. I have them as being downgraded 1.99 wins from where they were before the Cousins departure. And you add into the fact that this division is pretty tough with the Lions, the Packers, and the Bears potentially getting better as well. So all in all, I've got the Vikings at 6.1 wins. And that's a disappointing number for a team that I think won, 13 or whatever it was games a couple of years ago. But that's kind of the reality of what you've got with Sam Darnold as your projected starting quarterback. So that sounds low. And it may sound like I don't like the Vikings as a result. But I do like what they're doing. I like the process of what the Vikings are doing. They've got solid defensive signings. So they added some guys. If we assume they lose Danielle Hunter, I think overall they're making some smart signings, not splurging too much on the defensive side of the ball, giving Brian Flores some fun pieces to work with. And they've got a really good infrastructure around the quarterback between Jefferson, Addison, Aaron Jones now in the mix as well. So I think that what they're doing is if they add a rookie quarterback, that quarterback will be in a good spot to succeed. And you can't say that of everybody. Like the Panthers last year traded away DJ Moore. So when they added Bryce Young, it was like, okay, what are you going to do with him? And we saw that happen throughout the year as well. So I think what the Vikings are doing is giving themselves a path to a ceiling. And that's not going to translate to a high win total this year because win totals are inherently more so medians than 90th percentile outcomes. But I do like what they're doing, and I think that they have potential. I don't think I'll wind up being above market on the Vikings for this year specifically. They're plus 550 to win the NFC North, and I don't think that's going to be a number I like all that much. I'm not going to get them there, but I think it does give us a read of where their win total will be. I think it'll probably be around 7 or so if I had to guess where that win total is. Maybe I wind up liking the under, but long term, I think the Vikings are doing the right thing. And I wouldn't be shocked if they were to draft a guy and he could be someone who comes in and is at least somewhat successful right away. We go over to the NFL draft markets at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Vikings are now plus 230 to be the team that drafts JJ McCarthy. I think that makes a lot of sense. As we discussed in an episode on the draft earlier on this year, my model likes McCarthy quite a bit, not as much as, Jaden Daniels. And I think that Caleb Williams is a lot better too. But like McCarthy has really good underlying numbers. He's a very young quarterback, decently experienced. He's efficient. And when you put a guy like that in a good infrastructure, it's very possibly succeeds. So although my win total model is low on the Vikings for 2024, I like what they're doing. I think that the overall process of what the Vikings have done so far is pretty sound. So I think arrows up on the Vikings long term, despite the fact the short term isn't going to feel that great. I do want to stick in the NFC North briefly here. The biggest signings were not with Green Bay, but I think they're a very interesting team for this year because the overall division is fun. The Packers obviously signing Xavier McKinney, swapping out Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs. Jones now at the Vikings. I don't care about the running back part. I think that was really just a move to get younger at the position, which I understand. I might not have done it personally because I think that Aaron Jones is still a really good player who can be a valuable contributor on a team that wants to compete. But I don't think they're getting better there at running back. The McKinney part is interesting, though, because this defense of the Packers ranked 22nd overall last year based on numberFire schedule adjusted metrics. They were 20th against the pass and 21st against the rush. And McKinney is a guy who can help in those areas. He's not going to fix everything, though, but it's a good get at a position where they obviously did need some help given some guys they cut earlier on this offseason. When you combine that with their offense, I actually have the Packers projected for 10.1 wins. That's only a half win behind the Lions, who are at 10.6. The Lions are currently plus 135 to win the NFC North. The Packers are plus 220. The Bears are interesting, given that they've got likely Caleb Williams in town. I think that does make them intriguing. I've got them at 8 wins, which is like a decent number. But I don't think they're in the same tier as the Lions and the Packers right now. So I do want to see where the Packers win total opens up at, because I think that's the preferred market for me. I don't really want to bet against the Lions, given that I like Jared Goff a lot. I like that they added Carlton Davis. I think that the Lions overall are fun teams. So if I bet the Packers to win the NFC North, I'm inherently betting against the Lions. If I bet their win total instead, I'm not necessarily doing that. So that's my preferred market for the Packers. But I will say that plus 220 is very interesting, given that I'm lower on the Vikings, not super, super high on the Bears. And I think this Packers team does have a lot of upside when you combine Jordan Love with their young skill guys. Maybe McKinney can help this defense as well. I think there are building blocks there that are pretty good for the Packers. So not firing it right now, plus 220 to win the NFC North, but the Packers will be one of the first teams whose win total I check out once it is eventually posted over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Another big signing on Monday was the Philadelphia Eagles grabbing Saquon Barkley. I honestly thought the entire time this was like a smokescreen. It was the Eagles or someone saying they had interest in Saquon in order to drive up the asking price for the Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys might be a good spot for Saquon to go, drive up the asking price of the Giants as well if they want to re-sign him. I thought it was all a smokescreen, and then Howie Roseman says, nope, we're actually bringing this guy in. They added in Bryce Huff as well. So some important signings for the Eagles and some fun ones too. I've never been a big DeAndre Swift guy, so I was fine with them moving on from him. And Saquon Barkley is a running back who can add value in the passing game. For me personally, my philosophical stance in the NFL is I don't really care a lot about position. I care about where you contribute. And Saquon Barkley won't contribute to the passing game as much as like a wide receiver, but he's also not getting paid like a wide receiver. So I don't mind paying a running back if he makes your passing offense more efficient. I don't care about paying a linebacker if he makes your pass defense more efficient, stuff like that. I don't care what position you are. I care about what you do. And Saquon does make them at least a bit better in the passing game. Now, last year, when you look at the Eagles, their rushing offense should have been a lot better than what it was. When you consider that offensive line, when you consider the fact that rushing quarterbacks do tend to open a lot of lanes for rushing offenses, this team should not have ranked 9th in schedule-adjusted rushing efficiency based on numberFire's metrics, but that's where they were. I think they needed to make a move to make their running back position better, and getting Barkley does help there. But they're also not a team that uses their back a lot in the passing game. They did do a bit more of it last year. DeAndre Swift had a 10-target game. He had a couple other games of 6, and Kenneth Gainwell did too. Now, we saw them scale back on Swift down the stretch, potentially because Swift just isn't that good overall. I don't know. I don't want to, dump on him this entire show, but like Barkley is good in those areas. And he gives them 4 legitimately good targets in the passing game between A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Kellen Moore is at least interesting to as a play caller. So I like this offense. The problem is this defense is still really, really poor. And that was the main problem for them last year. It was not the offense that dragged the Eagles down. It was their defense. And now, sure, you had Bryce Huff, but they already had some good to decent pass rushers in Hassan Reddick. And so, like, they're probably going to move one of their pass rushers. So I don't know if Huff actually gives you a ton. Additionally, given that he was more of like a situational pass rusher in his previous life. Now no Fletcher Cox. So my numbers are still low on the Eagles, even though they've gotten bumped up in free agency with the Barkley signing and the Huff signing. Right now, the Eagles are plus 135 to win the NFC East. I've got the Cowboys still a full tier above the Eagles. I know that's like, kind of a clown take to have. I'm aware of that. But like, Cowboys came back last year, and that Eagles defense hasn't gotten a lot better. They did have Vic Fangio, and Vic Fangio matters. He's a good defensive coordinator. I've got a bump in there for him because I think he does matter. He's a lot better than what they had with Matt Patricia toward the end of last year. I need to see a bit more from their defense before I have a lot of faith in this Eagles team as it's currently constructed. So the offense, not really super concerned there. They do lose Jason Kelce, which stinks, but like overall, that is still a very talented side of the ball. And I'd expect them to play pretty well on offense next year. The defense still sucks though. And that's my big concern with this team. And I haven't seen enough to have a lot of faith there. So Eagles plus 135 to win the NFC East. No consideration for me even at that number. And I would not be shocked if I'm on the under on their win total for the season as well. One signing that was not on Monday, but we haven't really discussed yet in the show, was the Steelers signing Russell Wilson, probably going to compete with Kenny Pickett. And I'm not sure that's one that's going to get me anywhere near them. They're 11-1 to win the AFC North. I'd expect their win total to be probably around 7.5 or so. And I've got them at 7.1 wins. And that's nowhere near the top of this division. The Ravens are at 11.6 wins for me. Bengals at 10.6. And then you got Cleveland, who has upside if they can get Deshaun Watson to figure his stuff out. If Jerry Jeudy helps maybe get Watson a bit better, they have upside at least, despite the fact they're underwhelming. I don't think that Pittsburgh has that upside. So if you want to bet the Steelers to win the AFC North, you need them to beat 3 teams that have upside, and they don't have that. So like, can the Steelers win 10 games? Maybe. Can they win 11? Probably not. And one of these 3 teams probably will win 11 games. So I can't consider them the division. I will probably wind up being pretty in line with their win total if I had to guess. Wilson is an upgrade from Kenny Pickett, but that's not saying a whole lot. I can't put their projected passing efficiency very high, given what we've seen from Russell Wilson recently. So no interest in the Steelers here. I'll see what their win total settles in at. Maybe I can have some interest there, but as of right now, not a team I'm looking at too closely. I did want to go through other key teams that have had gains in the free agency period as far as the teams that have had slight upgrades. I got the Patriots at plus 8.82 wins with Jacoby Brissett coming in. I couldn't put their projected passing efficiency super, super high, given that their skill guys were a big issue and they're still not better. So it's Brissett what he was with Cleveland, but with downgraded skill guys around him. And that's still a somewhat underwhelming makeup for them. So Patriots 17-1 to win the AFC East. That makes sense. I understand that. They're getting better, but still they are the 4th lowest team in projected win totals for me this year, despite the gains with Brissett. I've got the Raiders at plus a half win with the Gardner Minshew signing. He is what he is. He is not high upside. Hopefully the Raiders are still in the market for a potential long-term starter because Minshew is not that. Up a half win, but nothing to write home about. The Rams are plus 0.16 wins. I think that's kind of interesting because they've committed to making the interior of their offensive line pretty good. You add that with some pretty fun guys overall. They're plus 410 to win the NFC West for a reason, because that's the Niners are there. The Niners are far and away the top team projected win totals for me. So not betting the Rams, but wouldn't be shocked if I consider them from a win total perspective. I'm at 9.4. I'm guessing they'll probably be in line with the market there. Final one that got a bump up was the Jags. And I don't know, man. They're a weird team. I think they're very frustrating. I think they're intriguing at plus 220 to win the AFC South. This is not like I gave them a bump up for Gabe Davis. I did not do that. I did give him a bump up, but not a huge one, just because he's like competent. He's a good run blocker. There are some things that Gabe Davis does well. And I think for me, it's more so about I expect regression in a positive sense from Trevor Lawrence this year. So in looking at the AFC South, I think the Jags are pretty interesting at plus 220. I have them above Houston right now. Personally, I feel very bad about that because I love CJ Stroud, but it's in large part because of the schedule. So the way this works is Houston won the AFC South. They have to face like the division winner schedule, and that's a lot tougher schedule. So in terms of power rankings, I have got the Texans as the better team in my preferred model. But in terms of win total, the Jags come out on top because their schedule is about 0.8 wins easier than what the Texans is. So even though I like the Texans more and I love CJ Stroud, I wind up having the Jags above them in terms of projected win total because of the easier schedule they will face. So I don't know. I don't really want to bet against CJ Stroud because I adore him, but with where things stand right now, the Jags are a team I could see myself buying into to win the AFC South in large part because of their division. The fallers across the opening day, the Bucs lost 0.44 wins for me. Carlton Davis trade was a big part of that, but also lost some other guys who did downgrade them too. So a downgrade there for the Bucs. I mentioned before, I'm highest in the Saints to win the NFC South. The Saints did get downgraded too, given that they have a tougher schedule now with Kirk Cousins being in town. I still think the Saints are the best bet to win the NFC South at plus 340. Do I like that? No. Because I don't want to bet on Derek Carr, given all the bad vibes around them last year. But it is a somewhat efficient quarterback with Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, guys like that. I understand why my model is here. It is what it is. The Cowboys lost 0.37 wins across the first day of free agency. They didn't do anything. They lost some offensive line pieces as well. That's why they went down. Eagles got better. Giants got better with the Brian Burns trade, stuff like that. So I'm okay with the Cowboys getting downgraded because they were kind of high for me to begin with, and they're still high. But I'd like them to get bumped down a bit more. So losers in day one, but still a team I'm high on overall are the Cowboys. And then the final one that got downgraded was the Panthers. The Brian Burns trade. Like, I know probably not a bad decision in a vacuum, given that they're not a team that will compete right now. Burns is a very good player. They got a decent return for him with a second and fifth round pick. Obviously not the 2 first rounders they could have gotten from the Rams a couple years ago, but like probably a smart idea to trade him despite the fact he is a very, very good player. And then you add in Kirk Cousins to the NFC South. So although the Panthers did bulk up the interior of their offensive line by bringing in a couple of good guards, they weren't great guards. They paid a lot of money for those guys, and I still have question marks around this passing offense. So tough scene for the Panthers, who are currently second to last in my win total model for this year. Hopefully they can turn things around, maybe add a receiver with those 2 second-round picks, but it's grim still for the Panthers, despite some of the moves they did make yesterday. That's all we got here for today on Covering the Spread. We'll talk more NFL on Thursday with Ryan Williams, getting his read on reactions to what he's seen across free agency, with that being the first official day on Wednesday where these contracts become final and stuff like that. So we'll talk to Ryan on Thursday to get more NFL free agency reaction your way then. To get that as it is posted, make sure you subscribe to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast tomorrow and Friday, talking college basketball, conference tournaments with our writers over at FanDuel Research, Aiden Cotter and Riley Thomas. They'll be with us on the show on Wednesday and Friday to hopefully get you some good bets across those days in the men's college basketball conference tournaments. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Sonis, and check out FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets across Tuesday. Enjoy day 2 of the NFL free agency market. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.